Well, we're on the road again after a short break, about a month I suppose, since the first trip, and we're doing this little short video to follow up on the first one, because the first trip we only did about 300 k's, a bit over 300 k's towing the van, and that really wasn't enough to get an idea. So this trip we've set the foundation for, and we've completed the trip obviously, and we covered 2,000 k's overall. 1,700 of those were towing the van. The van we were towing is a Jayco Journey Outback with a GVM of 2485 kilos, and the gross combination weight of the ute in the van is 5.9 tons. Our total weight before, when we left, was just over 5 ton 100 kilo, which is well within the legal parameters. The towable weight was around 200 kilos. We're trying to keep that down, obviously, and I'll explain why later in the video. We started from Perth again, and then out to the eastern wheat belt through 2J, Dowran, Wildcatcham, Corder, Bencoven, Muckambood, Bullfinch, Southern Cross, Coolgardie, Norseman, Esperance, Hyden, Condinnon, Corrigan, Brookton, and then back to Perth. The trip itself ended up being 3 little sections, you might say. The first section was as far as Norseman, spread over 3 days. We drove that all in the power setting in the car, so there was very little difference to what we'd experienced on the first trip. Towing could maintained usually in 8th and 7th gears for most of the time, at a speed of between 90 and 100 k's. The revs in 8th at 100k is about 1800. The fuel economy was around 16.5 for the trip to Norseman. In Norseman, had a look at how the figures were going, and decided that what would happen if we put it into Econ and for the run down to Esperance. The result of that was 8th gear was rarely sighted, and we spent a fair bit of time in 7th and 6th. The fuel economy did drop a little bit, but not significantly so, and the speed also dropped, or the average speed dropped, but the ute could still happily hold 90k per hour in 7th at just over 2,000 RPM. The terrain for this leg was still relatively easy going, and towards Esperance we were following a road train for some distance, and we didn't worry about trying to overtake or anything. It's all single lane, there's no overtaking lanes much. So when we were in Esperance, we ended up spending 5 days and nights down there. We had opportunity to go out to the east of Esperance to Alexander Bay. We left the van in Esperance, so we're travelling in the ute with all the stuff that was in the back, but we covered 50 k's probably of gravel and sand tracks and 150 k's of sealed road. There was nothing untoward with the way the ute handled the trip out there, apart from some dust ingress into the canopy. I'm going to have to find out a way of trying to stop that. I may have to put a scupper on the roof, but that's another job for when we get back. Driving on the bitumen was effortless. We stuck on the speed limit 110, and that was really easily done. Had to watch it actually. Speed would sneak up really easily. The ride was fairly compliant, as there was about 350 kilos in the tub. The fuel consumption for our trip out there in the sightseeing around Esperance over the 4 or 5 days, and we did about 300 k's, ended up being about 10 litres per 100k. The trip back to Perth took us via Ravensthorpe and Hyden. I had done that before, but especially between Esperance and Ravensthorpe, and I couldn't remember it being as undulating as it actually is. There's a number of short steep inclines before Ravensthorpe, and so your 5th, 6th and 7th were used quite a bit, and there was a bit of a crosswind as well. When we got to Ravensthorpe, we headed north to Hyden, and that was a bit easier going. It wasn't too much hilly stuff, and once you got up a fair way it was pretty flat. We did take a trip into, or detour really, into a little place called Little Italy. It's about 50 k's of gravel road going in that way that we did. There was nothing untoward happened there. Curiosity got the better of us for Little Italy, but there is nothing there much there at all, only a CBH receival point, so I don't know the significance of calling it Little Italy. On that little leg, the ute and the van behaved pretty well. We were only doing about 75k, so it's pretty smooth, and no corrugations or ruts or anything. The run from Hyden to Perth through Condinnon and Brookton saw the return of the undulating terrain, granite outcrops and steep rises and what have you. I still left it in eco during this section of the trip, or for all the trip from Esperance actually. And the ute stayed in the lower rations more often than not. Fuel economy ended up being very similar to what it had been in power setting, but it wasn't as pleasant to drive. You just run out of puff too quickly. The run into the city down the Scarp, Darling Scarp on the Brookton High was done in 6th, and a couple of brake applications on the way down the road, but there was nothing hairy about it at all. So when we get to the end of this, the trip was a deliberate exercise to see what could be reasonably expected in the real world. We didn't use the middle normal setting. We'll probably leave that for another trip. As far as a towing platform goes, it would appear to be okay. It's really suited for people not wanting to tow more than vans weighing a bit more than 2.5 tonnes. The limitation is not the power of the ute, but the maximum rear axle weight in the Lux spec model is 1540 kilos. The Pro model has more capacity at 1690. That could be the deal breaker for some, but the Pro is cheaper and misses out on some of the gear. Having said that, I have extra fuel and a battery model in the tub of my T60 which weighs 100 kilos, and I still comply with the weight limits, and most users will not have the same setup, so it leaves you scope to load your van a little bit more heavily, increase the towable weight. And the users of the Lux model will also have to swap out their 255 5519s for all terrain tyres. The original equipment tyres that on it are SUV tyres, and are totally unsuited for anything going bush. The spare is also under spec, with being a 245/65 R17 107T rating, and they are limited to 80k because it's an emergency tyre. As mentioned in the previous video, I fitted 245/70 17s, 116T 10 plies all round. That is all we've got to mention, really. But if people find this a little bit helpful, I'd like them to comment and pass on the comments or their comments and likes as well, so I can get some feedback. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video if there is one.